Okay, thank you very much, Andrew. So we are now on May 25th, 2023. This is our, sorry, not May 25th, May 11th, 2023, and week 101 of our IGU Summit event. So as we always start these events, with each week, we do acknowledge those who came before us on this land. So we begin today by acknowledging that we walk upon the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples. We recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of the land. We're grateful to all Indigenous groups for their commitment to protect the land and its resources. We're committed to reconciliation, partnership, and enhanced understanding. We acknowledge the land we're meeting on here in the Greater Toronto area is the traditional territory of many nations on the land known as Tikaranto, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Wendat, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, as well as the Métis peoples, and is now home to many diverse peoples. We'd also like to acknowledge the land we are on here is at the meeting place of two treaties, the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and those of the First Nations of the Williams Treaty. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share this territory and protect the land. We also acknowledge the Two-Row Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Six Nations of the Tikaranto watershed and the settlers, an agreement that bound them to work together, but to develop their societies in parallel on these shared lands. In our role as settlers and displaced people on this land, we share the responsibility of challenging and disrupting colonial systems that enact violence upon the land and stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples. We'd like to thank the Indigenous peoples of these lands, including First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, for sharing this land with us. We also acknowledge and recognize all of the world's Indigenous peoples as stewards of Mother Earth. Now, having said that, and earlier I'd mentioned that I will be traveling in less than 2 weeks to Taiwan. I may actually be broadcasting a different land acknowledgement when I do a broadcast from that island off the coast of China, because they, of course, have their own Indigenous peoples. I will acknowledge, of course, the peoples of Canada, but also in acknowledging their own peoples on the land on which I will be a guest. So I'd like to also say for all our friends in Africa, and as it's called, Al-Kebulan, Asante Sana, or thank you very much in Swahili. Thank you for joining us today for this IGU Summit event. I do also like to say Sawubona, which means I see you, I see myself in you, I see your hopes, your dreams, and your struggles. I see your ancestors as well, because interconnectedness does not end with two people who are greeting each other. It extends to include the ancestors. All beings and Mother Nature are interconnected. There is no sense of being separate. I see myself in all beings, and therefore, if I harm other beings or Mother Nature, it translates into harming myself. So today is Thursday, May 11th, as I said, in this year 2023, week 101 of our IGU Summit series. I do like to start with an introduction of who I am and who we are and what we're doing. So the overall purpose of UnityNet is to establish a global network of community Unity Garden learning centers where hybrid exchange programs and practical learning can be delivered by the members of UnityNet partners to all members of the Global Partnership for Regenerative Development, our learning partnership for global unity. The learning programs are intended to be delivered through the Global Sister Schools program in partnership with the members of the Global Unity Network. So what we do is we twin the local INAB collaboratives that we create in our local communities through our CTP program of the Science for Peace Drawdown Markham Community Climate Action Hub, which has this goal of building holistic, regenerative, climate-smart communities here in the Greater Tikaranto bioregion, also in support of the UnityNet and AHIABGA project of globalization of the global goals or the SDGs, and the establishment of a localized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. As I was saying to one of our members of UNAD last week, the best way to learn about the actions and purpose of UnityNet is to attend one of these IGU Summit events, and also take the training in community-based partnership building from our partner, Dance and Fitness Concepts in California, who's among us to try and help us succeed. Because what we are doing through UnityNet, the Global Unity Network, is helping local people, all people from every country around the world, not just in Africa, but globally, to structure their own local community and enterprise networks so they are prepared for the critical investments in climate change adaptation and resilience solutions that are coming from all around the world and that are vital for our very survival, and may even allow people in places like Africa to thrive in a much warmer climate. Without these new structures and creating these community-based partnerships, these multi-stakeholder partnerships with all of the community members, as per our HMP template, as transparent and nonprofit cooperative management entities, the global investors will not wish to consider to invest in places like Africa if they expect that there may even be a little bit of remaining corruption. So as I noted as well, to be perfectly honest, the investors would much rather put their money into the so-called developed economies, places like America or Europe or Japan or Australia, because the general feeling in most of these cases is that the developed world is a much safer place to invest their solutions. Of course, UnityNet is trying to change that perception by showing that it is possible to invest into Africa and avoid the corruption and avoid having to use the Bretton Woods system of top-down financing from the World Bank and others, and to make sure that direct investments are made to the people and solutions and still make an impact and still make a profit. But it is because of this, of so much historical corruption, that it is the prevailing perception in places like Africa. These are not places to invest in the people on the ground, but instead they are places to invest in only the resources, which is one of the reasons why there's so little investment into the people of Africa, except for the extractive industries like mining and logging and big industrial production that is controlled by these big corporations that don't usually hire the locals except for bringing in skilled labor, but instead hire the people for menial labor. Instead, the corporations bringing in their own experts from Europe or China or India or the United States or Korea or any of the other already industrialized countries. So you can be certain that these big corporations will not teach you how they do what they do or provide you with the finance to buy your own equipment to compete against their own personal interests, but will continue instead to use your lands, use your hands, and use your people for their own personal and corporate benefit and profits. So my advice, you can take it or leave it, is do not be dazzled by promises of riches or overnight wealth, because for most of these types of investors, they just want your resources and will take away the profits for their own peoples on their own continents, countries, and businesses. So companies like Energize, and by extension UnityNet, are here to help you establish your own kind of industrial civilization, but one that leads the way in the world and is based on people and their skills and their passion and their compassion, and not just greed and me, but are made of community members who understand that coming together locally and globally to help each other to succeed, all of us together as one human family, and help Mother Nature and all our relations to also succeed in their own local habitats in all of the bioregions of this beautiful planet is the only way forward for human survival and for thriving in a much warmer climate. What it means for each of us in each of our lives, in each of our own local communities, and in our personal business and families, for all the members of the UnityNet, is that our mission is all about helping to create a radical shift in our collective priorities in order to try to change the trajectory that we're currently on, to try and nudge the system in the right direction and create some tipping points in the collective consciousness of humanity itself, because it might just be the only way that we can survive this Anthropocene, as they call it. So again, I am putting some links into the chat for those who may be interested in some of the information that I'm talking about. For instance, our collaborative exchange program and some of the other related networks. There is also a link to an article about the Anthropocene, also from the Me Forum. There is also an article I came across recently that I think is probably quite eye-opening for many if they have not understood the trajectory we're on that many of the climate scientists have been warning about us about for the past few decades. So in order to understand the risks that are at our doorstep and the things and actions that we need to take, it's important to understand the context. So our organization, UnityNet International, here in the Greater Toronto area of Canada, helps people and organizations in all of our local communities to establish these local empowerment networks, these localized multi-stakeholder coalitions that help to attract ESG-based funding for local productive humanitarian entrepreneurs. We'd like to build an international network of researchers and developers and educators as well for the globalization of the global goals, with priority actions focused on regenerative development and regenerative living and lifestyles, which includes regenerative infrastructure and regenerative finance. So us here in UnityNet Canada and Ontario, both here in the Greater Toronto region and the Ottawa Valley in the city of Ottawa, that being the capital of our country and where national decisions are made, those are going to be very important hubs of activity, especially around the delivery of local solutions for achieving these goals of sustainable energy for all, regenerative housing, shelter and habitat for all, regenerative food for all through our local partnership ecosystems, and helping to demonstrate and achieve holistic, healthy communities for all, with the specific areas of focus being renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, regenerative farming, and food production, grown the regenerative climate smart way, along with regenerative water management, waste management, or the circular economy solutions, and the purpose being economic growth and expansion, but specifically done the regenerative climate smart way, along with supporting integrated localized habitat solutions for regenerative holistic living, learning, and lifestyle developments or redevelopments that help to achieve a localized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. Because within such a development and these development paradigms, it should be possible to continue to achieve economic growth at the same time as we repair our planet, as we continue along the pathway of figuring out how to create a robust and resilient and equitable economic system that does not require continuous and expanding extraction and degradation of ecosystems to survive, and to be both stable and sustainable and leave no one behind. So our main question to those whom we partner with, how can we help you to succeed in your business as the entire economy moves toward a relocalized or localized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that seeks to leave no one behind in all of our local communities worldwide. So our guest speaker today is Paul Ezika from Nigeria. So I'm noticing some of the people on the call today, but I'm not seeing too many people from Africa at this time. Please let me know if you do see Paul Ezika, and I don't know who is in charge of admitting people into these calls today, but again, I will just continue until I hear somebody raise their voice and say, Paul is here. So thank you very much, those who have control over this broadcast. So today, again, I will continue until we have our guest speaker coming on the call. So we are moving forward what we do in UnityNet through our Drawdown Markham Youth Task Force, and done again through the work of UnityNet International and our partners in UnityNet Africa and Diaspora, is to establish localized INAP collaboratives, these interfaith neighborhood academic and business collaboratives that are intended to empower our local productive humanitarian entrepreneurs in each of our own local communities, where our overarching goal is to establish a global network of local INAP collaboratives. The humanitarian entrepreneurs who are members of these INAP collaboratives, including the GP4RD members, are the ones who will also deliver the practical local regenerative solutions for achieving these global goals, those SDGs, locally, or as we say, locally. The purpose of the INAP collaboratives is not only to empower the local humanitarian entrepreneurs, but also to help organize the ongoing community engagement, as well as delivering the education and training in the local solutions that are required for local people to understand how to create and run things locally in their own local communities in order to become more resilient, self-sufficient, and decolonized, to better adapt to climate change, to boost their local economies, to ensure equity, harmony, and peace, and also to ensure that nobody is being left behind in their own local communities, watersheds, and bioregions. So the INAP collaboratives also ensure transparency and accountability, and are the vehicle through which we can demonstrate regenerative finance, where a portion of the monies that are spent in the community will stay in the community, but where a portion of the productive profits from these local regenerative community enterprises are also used to help others in their own local watersheds and bioregions. This is done in order to ensure that nobody is being left behind, and where some of those funds could also be used to help others around the world, and to ensure that all local communities can become self-sufficient and resilient and regenerative. So our ultimate purpose is ensuring that every local community in the UnityNet network has an INAP collaborative and a cooperative humanitarian enterprise network that is not only localizing the global goals, but is also helping their local communities achieve this localized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. So our goal is that by 2030, it will be recognized by those who finance projects and infrastructure, will provide things like insurance products or reinsurance for other insurance companies, that doing a local project or infrastructure development in any local community anywhere on earth should not get the financing until there is an active and functional INAP collaborative in that local community, made up of the community members and their allies globally. But how do we start this whole process? So this is where the Youth Peace Gardens Network comes in, where we start the discussions in our local communities by working with young people and their teachers, their families, and their neighbors to begin establishing, planning, and building a network of local youth peace gardens. It's in these gardens where we'll be able to spread the message of UnityNet and all we seek to achieve, because our message involves peace and a change in the paradigm of dialogue. Because we must always remember that we are fighting with peace and not for it, which means using higher consciousness for achieving our objectives. We're not fighting a war with each other to save the planet. We're making peace with the planet to save ourselves. So this strategy is being delivered at the grassroots level in all of our local communities, and will allow us to create a shared consciousness with peacemaking at the core of it, and where that peacemaking is intended to be more contagious than fear and war, where the strategy was originally coined by our partners in the Greater Unity Network, also called the Gaia Guitars strategy, and where the message will be centered around the elements and symbols of peace that we wish to incorporate into every local community of UnityNet. These include the peace poles in every community and classroom, a network of youth peace gardens established in every local community at a rate of 1 garden per 1,000 residents, with a tree of peace and reconciliation planted in every garden, and possibly also an Indigenous unity flag raised in a location nearby, in those places where it is recognized as a symbol of Indigenous unity, along with a peace pole erected in a conspicuous location with high foot traffic traffic within or next to the garden. So these are the symbols of the UnityNet Peace Garden Network, which also includes the Community Unity Garden Learning Centers, the Community Unity Hubs, the Unity Peace Centers, all of which will allow us to create sacred spaces in all of our local communities. The sacred spaces will also be mapped onto a dynamic UnityNet sacred site and watershed map, and are symbolic of the community of humanity coming together in peace, reconciliation, forgiveness, and the restoration of our relationship with Mother Earth and each other, because this is the only way that we'll be able to ensure that all of humanity and all our relations will be able to survive in the climate of the future. So again, I am putting a link in the chat to the UnityNet Peace Gardens Network, as well as our sacred site and watershed mapping group WhatsApp discussion for those who may wish to join in that endeavor. So for all, just to let you know who I am Lloyd Helferty, co-founder of UnityNet International, also known as Uni, a hybrid holistic practical learning system management company based in Canada that also assists with community partnership building locally and globally, or as we like to say, locally, by leveraging our unique set of community engagement activities developed in partnership with the members of the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors. I'm also the Chief Ecosystem Director, Program Development Director, and a Sustainable Society Consultant for AHIABGA Institute, which is headquartered in Manhattan, New York, in the US. I am, however, located in the city of Markham in the Don River watershed. The German Mills Creek is a sub-watershed here, which drains into Lake Ontario, which is the lowest and last of the North American Great Lakes in the Great Lakes Basin of the Greater Toronto Bioregion, or GTB, in Southern Ontario, Canada, North America, also known as Turtle Island, where AHIABGA Institute is a private 501(c) nonprofit company in New York, a member of the UN Global Compact, a United Nations academic impact member and partner, with a virtual system for helping empower global populations reestablish a sustainable balance with their local environments. So we do this by designing and implementing projects that support a strong and diversified local economy, while integrating core sustainable technologies and infrastructure into these communities in the areas of renewable energy, high-density food growth solutions, and systems for sustainably managing local waste streams and protecting local water resources. We are supported by over 375 companies whose products and technologies we employ. So importantly, AHIABGA Institute also supports local education and training in the construction, deployment, and maintenance of all of these various integrated solutions for achieving closed-loop systems that in turn support self-sufficient, sustainable communities. Just looking at the clock, I do want to mention again that people should notify me if they see the guest speaker coming on. I will go through the full presentation if there is no other topics to talk about today in particular, unless somebody would like to specifically talk about something today that is of pressing importance. The other thing is that we do have a cutoff time of 1 o'clock. Andrew had indicated to that earlier today to me by WhatsApp. He will need to use this Zoom portal for his own discussion. So we should probably get off at least within an hour or so from now at the most. Perhaps I'm going to take a little bit of a break before I move on and ask some of our guests to introduce themselves, in particular Moses Ekasiba. We'd like to know more about you and your interest in and how you had learned about this network. If it's possible for you to also put your contact information into the Zoom chat so we can follow up with you afterwards. We'd like to know your location and what you are doing in your own community. and your interest in the Global Unity Network.
Okay. Lloyd, it looks like Moses' microphone is not working. It's not showing up in the participants section at all.
Because
yeah.
I see his video on my screen.
Okay. That's the good
I've
part.
been able to ask him to unmute, but he says in the chat, my computer is not showing the screen. I am Moses Okira Ekasiba from Mombasa, Kenya. Okay, so we now have some identity. If it's possible at all, Moses, to share any of the organizations that you might be involved with in Kenya, in Mombasa. We can also follow up again, and perhaps if you are interested and you have something to say regarding the activities that you are involved with in your own communities, we may even be able to have you on as a future guest speaker. Except for that.
Well, I do have Moses scheduled for his first interview on Tuesday, the 6th of June. He does work a great deal with female empowerment, which is where we're at right now. I did meet with him on May 2nd as well. Let me see what May 2nd has to tell. Pulling up the camera.
Yeah, so excellent. So you can see, you can see for those on the call how much Lisa Anise is working. She's putting out reports every day. The interviews she's doing with many of the members who are on the ground in all of these communities. And this is really the critical part of the network that we're building, is the grassroots people on the ground who can actually report back, especially up those chains of reporting that have been established by, for instance, UN bodies, and are still being established so that basically so the UN and their organizations can understand what are the needed interventions that need to be implemented in these communities.
Yes. So what I have so far, he's simply done his intake. Moses works with an auto service outside of Mombasa. His big focus is education in a community where about 60% of the people live in poverty. We do have a new meeting set up, as I said, for early in June. And he does know what documents his association will be filling out. So he's been keeping very much on top of the game in terms of the information that we're looking for. And of course, the rest comes down to everybody else. He knows that I'll be meeting on the 6th of June. So that's where we are in this process.
Excellent, excellent. So always, it's been amazing to be working with you, Lisa Anise, and I'm glad also to have people like Stephanie and Heinrich and others that we saw earlier on the call, and Kevin as well. I'm hoping that actually, Kevin, you can give us a little bit of an update on where you are at in terms of your engagement locally here in the Greater Tukaranto bioregion, especially with many of the Indigenous peoples. And if you could perhaps unmute yourself and turn on your camera, Kevin, that would be wonderful. Your hand is
do
up.
we need to do we need to have your screen sharing right now, Lloyd, or can we put the...
I can turn it off for now, and you can do that. I was just thinking either I do my presentation, many have seen it. Moses probably has not, but we are able to connect directly now with Moses, as long as Moses, as we see, has shared his email and phone number for us. So thank you, Moses.
Now, for me to just share some of my progress or some of what I've been working on is I've been working on in our immediate area, Lloyd, as you are aware, from across the top of the city, we have the green belt within our provincial government has been radically shifting the the future of the farming area across our city. And so what I've been working on is building bridges in between Indigenous nations and allies of Mother Nature in our area to be able to build bridges between us so that we can stand unified and talk about some treaties and some of our historical relationships that our governments have buried over time. And I've been learning about these treaty belts and these 400-year agreements, and looking at opportunities to use our knowledge of these treaties as a catalyst to present ourselves unified in the street, in front of the cameras if necessary, hopefully, so that we can build a narrative that builds strength in between the communities that are being impacted by these decisions, and looking at other forms of law that we might bring with us to the consciousness of why we are building bridges together. So thanks.
And so thank you very much, Kevin, because this is vital work that needs to be done locally everywhere, where we build those bridges between the Indigenous peoples, the land protectors, the land stewards, and the settlers. Being among the settlers myself, of course, I'm also on this learning journey as well.
I think that we're also at a moment in time, whereas, I've been sharing with friends that consciousness has no reverse, no breaks, and no borders. So when we learn something and we learn our responsibilities to those 400-year treaties, which is why we were never taught them in school, is we understand that those treaties are descendants of migrants. There are treaties as well. It's not just treaties.
You're all treaty people. It's a word. That's actually a statement that I learned from Mitch Gold a long time ago. And part of the reason why I continue to want to work with Mitch, because he's been trying to teach these things to me for many years, but I just never really got it. But now we understand that there are the wampum belt treaties, the dish with one spoon and the two-row wampum being the most critical, but there is the chain of custody of our responsibilities that passes through the generations. And that is a very important thing to also understand in terms of our consciousness. Like, as you said, there is no reverse, no breaks. We must continue to honor the original agreements that were created by the very, very wise Indigenous peoples who are seeing these people coming onto their lands and realizing that probably this momentum was not going to stop, and they needed to do something that would allow them to continue their own traditions, especially in terms of protecting lands. So if there are no other comments today, we can either continue with my presentation, or we could end early.
Lloyd, it looks like Moses does have both his camera and his audio working as well. So if you want him to introduce himself, I think he might be able to make himself available.
Mm-hmm. So Moses, is it possible?
So Moses, if you could unmute your microphone and introduce yourself.
It looks like he is unmuted, but maybe.
No, he's working two different devices. The other device has everything working.
Yeah, I see that. I see that.
Moses, you'll find that icon to the far left of the bottom of your screen.
Oops. So in the meantime, so we don't have too much dead air, I can continue. What I usually like to say for those who are watching for the first time, because again, we do potentially have a number of people watching through Facebook, is that I do like to go a little bit into more details on what Energy Institute expects to happen as we attempt to begin to assist with projects in local communities anywhere in the world where we might wish to do them. I do remind our audience that Energy Institute is a charitable organization, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit in New York. And as such, we don't and legally cannot profit from our projects. Aside from covering the costs of operating and hiring the people, we need to create the projects in these local communities with our project partners being critical to their success. So we're not looking to compensate anyone for land or an opportunity to help them create a community project. Then in the end, they will own. So we can help to provide the facility construction support and of course the education and the training expertise, along with the project development support that allows your community members and local entrepreneurs to create the solutions required, whether it's in Canada here or in the US or in Africa or anywhere else in the world. So we don't intend to pay for that opportunity. We also help our partners find money for your own local projects, but that's only if you are willing to put up the land and find some of the financing on your own end as well. So as of this moment, we know of no other organizations or efforts other than some international agencies that we're aware of that will come in and gift such an effort to a school or community or country outright. So we all know about the UN financing, which goes through the governments and is top down, tends to be corrupted in many ways. So there needs to be a buy-in and material participation on the part of the partner for any charitable organizations and philanthropic entities to contribute to completing the funding and implementing these local projects. So this is particularly true if the project is designed for a school or other private organization and it's not direct funding to a government of your country. So we work also includes partnership with the UNDP. We're getting the participation of the countries directly. We're also able to look for matching funding in the US where Energy Institute is incorporated, especially from groups who are interested in supporting these projects. But if those entities in the other countries don't see material buy-in from partners who are entering this relationship in places like Africa or Indigenous communities, they will have no interest in funding these efforts. Where the mindset they have is that if the partner isn't willing to contribute to the local solution, they must not be committed to the project. So everyone we work with puts up the land, and after all, they own the projects after they're completed, but we do not and will not pay our partners for something our partners will ultimately own for themselves. So we're here to help and provide the project direction and implementation expertise for these essential projects. So we're committed to seeing them being done all around the world, but we do need partners who are at least equally committed to the success of these projects in their own local communities, where the benefit of the Energy Institute programs is that any community that builds them will have a local training center that will regularly graduate the next generation of high-tech farmers, and can also extend these efforts into retraining farmers throughout the community and even throughout your country and bioregion as well. But the key is community involvement, which may include a combination of local organizations, schools, government agencies, and where one of the main reasons why UnityNet is building our empowerment networks globally. So again, I can put information about myself into the chat for those who may not have it already. I'm just putting my particulars, in particular for Moses, who may not know me and be connected with me yet. And I am also seeing Mark on our call. I'm assuming that is Mark Patsangi. Did you want to introduce yourself, Mark? There he is. That big smile is always nice to see.
Hi there. Today was one of the days I could make it to Lloyd's call. My name is Mark. I'm partnering with Lloyd and Stephanie at UnityNet, and we're trying to further the causes that are very dear to all of us. We bond on common systems thinking across the board. Alongside UnityNet, I'm also working to promote Carbon Shot and its capabilities and bring it to market and to help in the regenerative thinking and processes that we are trying to push through. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Mark is our business guy in the Toronto area. We're really hoping to work with to make sure that his business is also successful, and anybody that he's affiliated with as he moves forward, in particular with energy system development, which is his spear tip moving forward. Whereas we are, of course, working on the food system side with people like Stephanie, and of course the community partnership ecosystem development with people like Lisa Anise and all the partners that we're trying to work with in the Indigenous community, which is, I'm seeing Kevin as well has his hand up one more time.
I'm interested in the concept of change and ROI and inequality and all these different things that we find ourselves under in our space in Canada, for example. You know, we have an iconic retailer called Canadian Tire that sells a wide variety of products from pet food all the way to car parts and tires. And this year, they have a 100-year anniversary that they're spending millions of dollars on patting themselves on the back about how they are Canada's iconic retailer. I have a multi-generational experience with this retailer, whereas my father helped build their locations in the 70s, and I took over into that style business myself into the 90s. And at one point, we had 300 employees and doing about $10 million worth a year of just service providing for expanding retail across Canada and the United States. So here we are at a time where we're talking about localization and talking about these systems changing and how these systems must change incrementally. A bunch of them must change towards one unified direction, which is solving these peripheral crises that we have. But as peripheral as they are to each other, there's a common denominator within them, and that is the inequality that's built and designed within the system that allows it to perpetuate. So when we talk about using this example as a Canadian retailer, my apologies, one second, as a Canadian retailer, that is going to be talking about how Canada they are, but yet the products that they sell, the products that they provide are the exact same products that other retailers provide, because our global supply chain has been created in such a fashion that the supply chain is mostly invisible to a lot of people, whereas they don't know where the marginalization lies necessarily within these systems that people support by purchasing these items. So part of my desire is to be able to use my experience to call out these greenwashing tactics and strategies that will that have become a cornerstone for big business moving forward. And that's kind of one of my interests, is to use the moment in time where we're at to kick the can over, if you will, to help people understand by connecting the dots of our history that we can see little windows into our future based on the trajectory of us making the same decisions that we've been making so far. Thanks for this one.
So this is actually very interesting, what you just said, Kevin. I would suggest for you to take part in our conversations with, as I mentioned earlier, our ally here in Toronto, who is working closely with Herschel Daniels Jr. In the FAU, so the Friends of the African Union. There's a new group that has been created. I want to have a quick discussion with him. Before I leave, I'd like to actually meet him perhaps next week in person down in Toronto. He's actually not too far, a couple kilometers, I believe, a couple kilometers east of Downsview Park. So in north of the 401. So he is our ally. He would like to work with us to help develop these learning centers as well. I believe Stephanie and probably Mark and others would probably wish to be with us in those discussions with him. I believe that he has a very strong network and is one of the strongest allies for us to move forward. But he also, like Andrew, has his own media company. And that could be a conversation that you could have with him, where we could consider, for instance, to transition from only using Andrew's network to also using the networks of our allies in helping to build our media ecosystem. And this really, what you've said, Kevin, is important in terms of getting those messages out there to us so-called consumers or citizens around these various supply chain issues that you have just told us about.
I think it's key. I'm Stephanie Schuler from UnityNet International, from Uni, and I think it's key what you said, Kevin. Essentially, and as we're constructing or leading the guiding stages of the learning network, essentially this is a learning network, we should be looking to our past, we should be looking to our history, looking at the lessons learned and the indigenous and all cultural wisdoms that we've lost, that we've forgotten, and there are entirely sustainable and regenerative systems from all indigenous groups around the world, which represents today about 15% of the world's population. But we must savor and instill the wisdoms that we already know from all of these regenerative systems and from all of the well-being systems globally. And of course, especially from my perspective, and along with MAP, the Maui Aloha Project Eco-Village Initiative, to be creating communities that learn these regenerative systems regarding housing and food security, but also, of course, regarding climate action, the well-being of the individual and the community. And all of our ancient and indigenous communities since the beginning of time have had infrastructures in place for also our social and emotional well-being, the well-being of being part of a community, being part of the village, however that looks in a city or the country. So I value what you said for sure, and we must look to the history to know the do's and do nots of the future. So thank you, everybody, and proud to be together in this consciousness, a shared consciousness that I really I know, and all of the people that have been with us now for years, we're coming together. We're no longer siloed. The digital age does offer us the opportunity to come together like this in an instant and put together all the systems that we need for a thriving future for the planet and all of its inhabitants.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we are co-creating this as well as we move forward. I often share videos and other materials, for instance, from the PodNet co-op people and things like the Solar Roof Village video, which I really like to use an example, but which is actually quite an old video, and they have many more things beyond that now that are well beyond those original concept ideas. But we're also, I think, in terms of co-creating this future for ourselves, with that understanding that what we need to be doing is finding ways of aligning ourselves with nature, so that we can live lives that protect and enhance not only our own habitats and our own economies, but the habitats and economies of those other living things in our own watersheds and bioregions. So this I think is the big thing that Kevin was saying right now, is there's this kind of fight going on with the Ontario government, as an example of opening up the green belt or allowing developers to pave over nature much faster than ever before, where what we need to be doing is raising the consciousness that we need to actually be restoring nature faster than we're destroying it. And we need to be creating these habitats from what was previously destroyed and recreate habitats for nature that in our own watersheds. So I'm seeing Moses, you have your hand up one more time, and I'd like to give Moses a chance to talk if he's able.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Lloyd, and on the panelists today. Very glad to be here today. First of all, I'm Moses Kiru Ekasiba, the Executive Director of Gilead Inclusive Global Organization. It's a non-governmental organization registered to the national government in the Republic of Kenya. Our main agenda, main objectives is champion for human rights and development. We have programs we undertake on eradication of hunger, women empowerment. We also have some agriculture parts that we have adequate rainfall. We also do education for vulnerable communities. We also support the blue economy, especially at the coastal part of Kenya, where we have the Indian Ocean. We have our young men and women who do the blue economy business, fishing and whatever. We also do eradication of poverty through community empowerment, through projects that can empower both the elderly in the community, widows, widowers, and also the young youths who are vulnerable and have no jobs. So basically, this is what we do. I've interacted with Madam Lisa, several programs she has taken us through as a team. And as she said on the chat, on the 6th of June, we will be having her again with our association group here in Kenya. Again, to us. So basically, that's what we do. We invite you and the like-minded people. We are all organized together in the UnityNet Kenya, where we get information, get the trainings weekly through our brother Lloyd. Time we had the issue of honey, Congo DRC, which was very informative. We also have honey harvesting in parts of Kenya, parts of Rift Valley, other places. So thank you so much. Briefly, I think it was just an introduction, but we will have more presentations in future in that time. Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, Moses, so much for that. So it looks like Lisa Anise has also left us. So it's 12:05 here. We've been on for, we're approaching 1 hour. We can keep today's presentation and discussion short if we wish, and just make it for 1 hour today, and that will leave us time for the rest of the day to do other things. Of course, as I noted, for myself, I'm actually preparing for travels in under 2 weeks. Many things to do because I will be gone for 7 months until the end of the year. We return in mid-December. And so there's a lot for me to be preparing for along with my wife. And so we have as well a number of events in our calendar, as I noted at the beginning. As well, we have our living room calendar, which includes all those events in our whole UnityNet portfolio of community engagement. So of course, with that, I'd actually perhaps like to move forward and redisplay my screen one more time so that we can actually go through and people can understand that calendar. Let me just see here. I'm going to share one more time. So I went through on the who I am thing, but I wanted to show this calendar again because the events that are coming up. So this is something that I had been creating since January, this living room calendar with our primary events. So we do have the 5 key events. So April, we've done our first event in April on Earth Day. There's another one coming up in May, and I'm almost ready to publish the May event for World Biodiversity Day on the 22nd. So now is the 11th. We have another 11 days or so until that event. I'm hoping that we'll have something similar like we just did, but it'll just be in the local park here, here in Leechcroft, where I'm living, where we have a small ceremony and try to invite people out to come and join us to protect biodiversity, as there has been that big meeting in Montreal recently. But then we have June, August, and October events as well. So as we did the UNDRIP Day on April 22nd, we have the other events that we would like to move forward with. Of course, I will not be now here in Markham or in Canada. So I will try to move forward as best I can when I'm in Taiwan to do those events over there as well. But we'll need to have our leadership here, in particular Mark and Stephanie, to take that forward and hopefully work with people like Kevin to advance those events and have something that can be worthy of broadcast for the rest of the members of our network, which we do need to get also involved in these programs. So as I said last week, it is now confirmed. Again, I will be going to Taiwan. Departure is Tuesday, May 23rd. I will be staying there for the rest of the year until December. I am hoping to meet up with the designer of the Wheel of Life Farm regenerative aquaponics system in Vietnam, who's only about a 3.5-hour flight from Taiwan. Given that I'll be staying there for 7 months, it is also likely that I'll pivot most of my attention to Asia with a strong focus on both Southeast Asia as well as East and South Central Asia too. So my focus will be to begin having conversations about establishing peace poles in the schools with the youth peace gardens in the local communities of Taiwan as the first steps to establishing these youth centers, the peace centers, and perhaps a UnityNet museum somewhere on the island of Taiwan, perhaps in the mountains around Taipei or Taoyuan, which already actually means peach garden and alludes to its history. Of course, I won't be here to support the local UnityNet GTA team directly with feet on the ground, but at least not for the 7 months I'll be away. But I will be participating in the ongoing discussions, hopefully with York University and the University of Toronto, as well as Rotary Ontario, the local scouts, the YMCA leadership, the school boards, City of Markham's Mayor's Youth Task Force, which we are hoping to engage with, as well as perhaps even IBM Canada and their headquarters in Markham. And I know Kevin mentioned that perhaps we should also engage with Canadian Tire, and if they have a headquarters in Markham or an office here, that's definitely, or in York region or even in Toronto area. But the York University Markham campus is where we'll want to focus much of our attention because of their affiliation with UNESCO and the UNESCO Center for Reorienting Education for Sustainability. So let us continue our conversations about twinning the projects now between Taiwan and Africa, and maybe Nepal and Indonesia and Canada, where we'll be able to do these POC projects in different provinces, not just here in Ontario, but perhaps in BC, perhaps in Alberta, in Quebec, and elsewhere, through the PodNet global network that's also across Canada and internationally. Also with the University of Toronto and their school boards in Toronto, and York University, which has their 5 locations, those climate solutions parks, which are in downtown Toronto, one in the Regent Park neighborhood, another one at Downsview Park, which is that former military base where there are over 570 acres of land to work with, which is already home to one of Canada's largest urban farms. So the York U Markham campus, their researchers also have at least 3 other sites, including the First Nations community up in Northern Ontario, which we'd like to be our twin for the Indigenous community projects in places like Kenya and or Uganda and or South Africa with the Zulu, or in Mexico with the Maya. So in the meantime, while I'm in Taiwan, I will reconnect with many of my contacts as well at the Industrial Technology Research Institute, which is considered their green, clean energy and eco-technology center in Taiwan, where they represent the Taiwan researchers industry for clean tech and green tech. And I also have some contacts at the National Chung Sing University in Taichung, along with other universities on the island. So I hope we can partner with York University, partner with York University of Toronto and various other universities and colleges and high schools in places like Hawaii and California and Sri Lanka and Nepal and Indonesia and Vietnam, and in Africa, of course, and Latin America and Caribbean and Oceania too. So this can be done through our UnityNet Global Sister Schools program and the learning exchange programs between the schools, so that we can help to get the students learning quickly and can get them to help us design and deploy these solutions and the related learning programs in local communities around the world, so that these young people can get some hands-on experience with all of these regenerative climate smart adaptation and resilience solutions, and will allow those local communities to begin adapting to climate change and put them on the path to restoring nature through local habitat restoration projects done in their local watersheds and bioregions. So again, I'm putting in the chat a little bit of information about where I will be specifically in Taiwan, in Taoyuan, which I mentioned means beach garden in Mandarin Chinese. I'm also providing a little bit more information about Downsview Park, which I believe could be probably the just about perfect place to do any pilot projects. So there's connection with York University we would like to continue to establish. I am putting some information as well about the Industrial Technology Research Institute in Taiwan. As I said, I would like to reconnect with them while I am over there. They're the one that originally invited me to Taiwan many years ago to do a presentation about biochar at that time. So as a result of this new development, of course, as I go to Taiwan, the concept of developing this school food programs may not be something we do here in Canada immediately, although this would be something to consider in the future. Although I might still contact Ricardo Larivière, that chef in Quebec who lamented that Canada is the only G20 country in the world that doesn't have a school food program. As I noted last week when I asked the question, what can we do about that? I'd like to again invite those on this call to help me create a new UnityNet Global School Food Program node of UnityNet, where we'll get an opportunity to partner directly with UnityNet Canada's school food programs as we develop our proof of concept projects here in the country. Because although I will be in Taiwan, I will still plan on moving forward with organizations like Rotary International and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Taiwan, where we can continue to work with our partners across the spectrum, from the national government to the provincial governments, to the local municipal governments, to the school boards, to the Rotary clubs, to the YMCA and Boys and Girls Clubs, in all of those UN Global Compact corporations, some of which will also have offices in Taiwan. And so we can still work with restaurants and restaurant associations, and with farmers and food producers and food supply chain organizations, and anyone else who wants to work with us. And we can create the network of national school food program worldwide that focuses on fresh, nutritious, local, regenerative, and climate smart food that's delivered in our local schools with the local teachers and the humanitarian entrepreneurs and local families in our local communities. So our goals have not changed. We're still very much focused on teaching young people and all of their family members and friends and their local communities about these solutions that allow us to adapt to the potentially catastrophic consequences of climate change, allowing them to potentially thrive in a warming climate and to achieve a localized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, and regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. So this is a little bit of the additional information I had wanted to share today. Again, I'm sharing in the chat some of the information I have shared it in the past, but in terms of moving forward, I think there's opportunities now to connect with new organizations in Taiwan, along with some of the historical relations that I've had. Again, you'll see in the chat a link to where I will be physically in Taiwan, most likely. And you can see there's sister cities of Taoyuan, the community I'll be staying, including in Poland and 2 in the United States, one of which is Irvine, California. The other one is Washington, Washington State.
Lloyd, it looks like
West
Kevin's
Coast.
hand is up to speak.
So Kevin, is that a historical artifact, or were you wanting to say a few more things, Kevin?
No, again, Lloyd, I'm wondering, do we need to be looking at sharing your screen at this moment? Is it what you're saying relevant to what you're sharing on screen right now?
Well, what I'm saying is around the calendar, and the calendar is very important because we do have our very next event, as I said, World Biodiversity Day, Sunday, May 22nd. So that is only around 10 or so days away.
Are
a
we
dozen
still
days or
talking
so.
about that right now? The May 22nd? I just don't understand what's irrelevant to the calendar now. Yes, I understand you've shared the calendar and what's upcoming. I understand that you're away for the rest of the year, but I just don't understand what the calendar is related.
We would like to have the calendar, the events of the calendar continue to move forward. So as you'll see in the chat, World Biodiversity Day, Sunday, May 22nd. So again, in 11 days. I haven't yet published the Eventbrite page, but you can see the URL that I've just shared. I will be here for this event, and that's one day before we leave.
If you don't want to see the screen, then you can just have the participants on your screen. You can press a different button.
It's not that I don't want it on the screen. I'm just trying to understand its relevance to what we're talking about right at this moment, because we were not, before I asked the question, we were not talking about mobilizing anything for May 22nd. We just know that it's 11 days away, whatever the case may be. I'm just trying to understand its relevance to the subject matter right now, because there's stuff on the chat that is irrelevant to the calendar, yet the calendar's on screen. So I'm just trying to understand it.
Well, I'm including information about the fact that I'm traveling and the fact that we have these events coming up that I will not be here for, in particular the Abraham Project Tree Planting Day on Monday, June 5th, 2023, so World Environment Day. So I wanted to say that just because I'm out of the country, these events, it doesn't mean that these events cease to happen. So we're hoping that all of our UnityNet GTA members and affiliates will still be able to move forward here in the Greater Toronto area, even without me, and I'll be trying to move forward to do similar events where I am in my own, in the bioregions where I will be staying. So this is the essence of the conversation, and it does relate to the calendar because as you can see, it is now May 11th. I will be leaving on the 23rd, and we have an event on the 22nd, which is the Biodiversity Day event. This is, again, it will be published soon. I'm almost through creating the Eventbrite page for that. But then we have another event on June 5th, just in about 2 weeks after that. And then there's an event on August 12th and the Youth Peace Weeks and other events in October, all of which I will not be here to be able to participate in person. So I'm going to be relying on those who are engaged in this conversation here in the Greater Toronto area, including yourself, Kevin, hopefully working with Mark and Stephanie, and if we can meet with this gentleman that I talked about earlier, who's also affiliated with the Friends of the African Union, we can also move this agenda and start to organize these events for the rest of our calendar year. It's just a matter of being able to work together with other people who are in our watershed.
So speaking of that, then Lloyd, has there been any outreach between, between your Toronto GTA efforts and the existing Indigenous Sacred Fire action with the youth that's currently happening in Toronto? Like there has been a sacred fire that has been lit and attended by youth within your watershed since January. So I'm trying to understand, like, how is Indigenous outreach actually happening within your efforts or the collective efforts of the members that are here from the Toronto area? Like I haven't seen any progress made within these efforts, within your watershed, that has any inclusion with Indigenous people that are actually doing street work, conscious work right now?
Again, this is why we need a network of people that are taking action, like yourself, Kevin. I believe you represent the point of connection. It's not myself. I don't have those relationships, and we only have a very small team, right? We have 3 people, essentially.
Yeah, and I'm asking because I don't know who the people are in the group, or what the people in this area. I'm just asking because I'm behind the 8 ball in terms of I haven't been participating, and I haven't been participating because I haven't seen any outreach happening so far. And in the event, like, I'm not going to, I'm cautious of how I expose myself to opportunities to build bridges within Indigenous contacts and relationships that I'm building. I'm apprehensive to bring people into this group because I've seen no other reciprocating growth within Indigenous speakers, Indigenous elders, Indigenous knowledge keepers within this group so far, since my peripheral
Because
exposure to them.
as I've explained many times, the Indigenous people we originally connected to were in Africa, not in North America. It was the Indigenous people of Africa who reached out to us and said they want to learn more about the Indigenous knowledge keepers of the Americas. So we are building a bridge through.
How long ago was that they reached out to you asking for that? Yet we've not delivered by bringing any Indigenous knowledge keepers from our area to this group.
Well, we have, and there are connections, especially in the US. And this is, again, the connection with and through the Friends of the African Union. So the Friends of the African Union has been the most engaged with Indigenous peoples, but it's not in Canada. It's in the United States, primarily.
The network began like quickly with the Indigenous groups that came forth to us from Africa. And really got quite coordinated, and it's been quite a coordination, actually. But we're looking to build the network in Canada, of course, because that's where Lloyd and myself are, and across the globe. But we need helpers to help us build it. This is a co-creation. We don't want to be doing anything to any group. This is a co-creation to showcase the smart systems, the necessary, regenerative systems. And we know that, and also, MAP, the Maui Aloha Project, which emanated from Maui, Hawaii, we know how tender garnering the relationships is with our Indigenous communities. And we want it to be honorable, and we want it to be with pure intention to work as a co-creation. So we need other people to come from the grassroots to say, this is important to be able to communicate to all of these systems that we know are age-old and necessary. And we'd like to help bring together the necessary people so that we can really foster a network of communication regionally, nationally, and internationally. How can we, put this all together? But it's a huge job to garner the relationships. And Kevin, we welcome yours and other people's assistance regionally in the Canada area, and also we welcome everybody's help around the world to really help us garner trusting relationships where we can all be vested in co-creating, these next steps. So so we know, Lloyd and I know most of all that we really like to garner those relationships here regionally in the Toronto, Greater Toronto area, Turtle Island, Canada, and we welcome your help. So we definitely agree with you that we don't have enough interaction, and that's an important next step.
Thank you, Stephanie. So of course, the other connection we have is with the 7th Generation Initiative. And that is, again, another connection we'd like to make. So we are mostly, what we do as an organization, UnityNet, is we create the spaces for those who wish to learn more about these systems that we are trying to co-create together. So we are not going out to any specific organization and saying we would like to specifically talk with you. What we're doing is putting an open invitation for everybody to come out to these spaces to have these conversations. So this is again, of course, our IGU Summit event, but it's not, the network itself is not intended to be only for the purpose of connecting the Indigenous peoples of Africa with the Indigenous peoples of the Americas. That's what this event was created for. But it also, we have so much other work that we're doing to establish relationships with the service providers, with the other nations of the world. And our role is essentially to build the infrastructure, which is essentially the places of dialogue where these conversations can happen, and then send out invitations to join in the discussions and the conversation around how do we achieve a regenerative future. But we're just having an open dialogue and open forum that anybody can join without actually organizing ourselves to target any specific communities at this point in time. We don't have a specific agenda on that, although again, I believe it's an important conversation to have. And if we can meet next week in person, especially with Mitch Gold, who arrived in Toronto last night, we can then move forward and have conversations around the partnerships we create. Because this is the essence of our business, is to create partnerships for the goals. What are the goals? We have the 17 goals right now, but our intention is to establish demonstrations of communities that are resilient, sustainable, and self-regenerative, that also help to define what are the next set of goals. So we're looking at 2030 and beyond and saying, what is the framework for those next set of goals? And start to begin to build those demonstrations of what that could be, or what those next set of goals could be moving forward. So 2030 to 2045. And we'd love to connect with, of course, the Indigenous communities of this watershed, but we're going to do the work we can do, mostly with our partners in the African Union, or in the Friends of the African Union, and in the United States, where they have those partnerships. So we don't necessarily need to develop those partnerships ourselves. We partner with an organization that already has partnerships. So yes, so I'm seeing you're asking in the chat when to meet with Mitch. It hasn't been set up, but I'm hoping to meet him either this weekend or Monday. And for sure, I think Monday there's going to be a meeting actually in downtown Toronto at 12 noon. So that could be something where we can perhaps create a small chat group with, I'd say, yourself and Stephanie and myself and Mitch, and then we can see if we can arrange to have a meeting either before that, perhaps tomorrow or on the weekend, or in the early morning of Monday before that meeting that Mitch has in Toronto, if that works for you. So thank you, everybody. It is 12:34. I believe I will probably finish up our conversation today unless there are other additions to our conversation at this time. I'm just seeing if I had added anything here. No, so I don't have anything really that new to be adding to the chat this week. Most of the things I had added. Although I do want to say again that today, again, we're looking at the calendar, May 11th. So we have a number of events today or coming up. So this weekend is World Migratory Bird Day, May 13th. That's every second Saturday of May. We also have International Day of Families on May 15th, International Day of Living Together in Peace on May 16th, which is also International Day of Light, which is a UNESCO event. There's also World Telecommunication and Information Society Day on May 17th, and World Bee Day on May 20th, where we're actually hoping to promote our bee stewards in Africa. And then less than 3 weeks ago, on April 22nd with Earth Day, International Mother Earth Day, where we did our 100th Day events, the drumming ceremonies, and where we're now looking at the calendar in terms of what are the events that just happened as well, where African World Heritage Day just happened on May 5th. I wasn't able to announce that last week, so I'm putting that into the chat along with some information about World Migratory Bird Day, which is actually this Saturday coming up as well. That could be something that we align ourselves with. I'm not sure if there are events that are happening in the Greater Toronto area specifically. There's also the International Day of Families on May 15th, which is Monday, and the International Day of Living Together in Peace, World Peace Day, which is May 16th. And I'm thinking that's probably one of the things that we should have a discussion with Mitch about as well. So you'll see a link in the chat around International Day of Living Together in Peace, Peace Day, May 16th, as well as International Day of Light, and even World Telecommunication and Information Society Day, immediately following on May 17th. And then, as I mentioned, World Bee Day on May 20th, where we have now some new networks as well with regard to the initiatives. So we had originally the Honey Project, but now we also have some additional networks related to that. In particular, there is a network, and I'm not sure if I can find it here. I may not have added it to my notes here that would allow me to put it there immediately. But this is the conversation that we will be having with Mitch for the next couple of days. And I don't know exactly his agenda in terms of returning to Playa del Carmen in Mexico, but certainly we should move forward and have that conversation. So I'd like to ask as well if Cleveland Joseph might be able to introduce himself. We have 4 people left on our chat today. If not, then we will probably end the call for our session, our UnityNet IGU Summit event on this day. Kevin, did you have additional comments?
I just like to know if there's anyone that you have locally, Lloyd, that would like for me to introduce bring them and introduce them to the people at the Sacred Fire at Eglinton. In the event that there's someone locally that would like to meet face to face, I could help facilitate that. It's a youth group that's Indigenous led youth group that is holding standing ground right now at a construction site that's related to destroying of a urban park within the city of Toronto. So if you do have any members of the GTA that would like to actually meet someone that's on the ground, presenting themselves in front of nature and in front of construction, by all means, make that connection with me and I'll help facilitate that. So, and I'll look forward to, continuing on. So thanks for your effort, Lloyd. I really appreciate it.
And I would like to ask Stephanie if she might be able to find the time to do that, connect with Kevin, and to see if there's possible that you can actually go down and meet these young people who are holding the Sacred Fire at Eglinton. That in that way we can establish those relationships.
Oh yeah, so crucial, Kevin, and I don't believe in accidents. I believe that the people that have been drawn to our growing team of trying to co-create what we know we need as a planet are coming together. And yeah, absolutely, let's try to amplify our voices and increase our consciousnesses. And we can see that it's happening. We're in the transformation, and let's hope it brings about what we're hoping for.
Mm-hmm. So if Stephanie, I don't know if you have a Facebook account, and that's typically the way I'm connecting with Kevin. But we should connect that way, or we can create a little chat group.
Great if Kevin could leave his email and or cell.
I believe, Kevin, you are connected also on WhatsApp.
Perfect. There it is. Perfect.
And we could create a little discussion group with Stephanie. I don't think Stephanie's on Facebook. So we will have a conversation with this afterward. So again, I'm gonna have to rely on you, Stephanie, to do most of the heavy lifting while I'm out of the country.
I'll do my best with all these amazing people who are coming together, and we're going to do it together. Oh, one more thing, Kevin. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be really grateful to have an opportunity to meet with you, Stephanie. We could share a coffee and share a chat much faster face to face, as to give you an idea of what I've been doing so far and where I'm at within those relationships. I think it's probably great timing for everything, I believe. As you said, nothing, I've stopped saying coincidence and interesting. I stopped saying that a little while ago because I don't believe in a coincidence anymore. Right. So yeah, here we are, right? So I look forward to doing that, because I have some horsepower within the people that I've been working with, within the Greenbelt Guardians and across the whole north of the city. So there is some divine timing that's involved here for sure, because the Greenbelt Guardians are one step away from having a unified collective action that raise consciousness in front of the TV cameras, as we've seen in other parts of the world. So we're there right now. So I look forward to chatting with you.
There are no accidents, and I look forward to that as well, Kevin. I'll send you a hello, and we'll take it from there. Yes, thank you.
And let's consider, we'd like to develop these relationships so we can, again, bring some local Indigenous people onto these IGU Summit events, just as we did not too long ago. We brought in some people. Of course, the guest speaker that you helped us bring in, Kevin, was in the greater Great Lakes watersheds, but not really local, right? We need to connect with those local Indigenous people, which we have not been able to do yet. But certainly, I think because this initiative is to help empower our female and feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs, Stephanie needs to be the one to engage with. The females of our watersheds are so critical to making this happen.
Well, I'm available to meet you, Stephanie, at your leisure. I'm north west of the city. I'm straight north of Oakville. So if that's anywhere near you, it would be great for us to share a walk into the woods if you like, and a chat, or if nothing else, just a coffee, and I'll drive part way to meet you if that's that
Beautiful.
works best.
I'm in York region around Highway 7 and Highway 400, so I can come a little bit west and north, no problem. We can meet somewhere.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin.
And thanks again, Lloyd, for everything that you're doing. And I look forward to sharing a chat with you, Stephanie. Thank you very much.
And if it's this, like next week, for instance, I can still come out. Like, I'm not leaving quite yet. So there's still a little bit of time before I'm actually in the air on the 23rd of May. So think about 12 days, in the next 12 days or so. Let's see if we can get together.
One morning, maybe 9 o'clock somewhere. One morning.
Even on the weekends, if that's something that works.
Perfect.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I look forward to an email of the same, and thanks again. All right, chat later.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Cleveland and Stephanie. I will be ending the call right now. Everybody, this has been IGU Summit Week 101 on May 11th, 2023.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you,
Have a
everybody.
great day.